Welcome to the Meat Bags Podcast, a time where we get to sit down with casual conversations with friends to talk about all aspects of traditional skills, from business to meat processing, from conservation to physical training, and any rabbit trails that we might find in between. Episode 3. This episode is with Anthony, who is a true friend and brother. Anthony and I had the privilege of spending 9 months together in the wilderness of Montana with no cell service or internet before going out into the adult world. Little did we know that we would be caught up in life together as our families grew. Anthony is a true jack of all trade. He just finished building a home for his bride. He's a successful hunter year in and year out, biology teacher, and an avid conservationist. In this episode, we talk conservation, or should I say stewardship, as a traditional skill, and even dive into its origins and why it's so important for all of us to be involved, especially as Christians. Without any further ado, welcome to the Meat Bags Podcast, where we are far more than just bags of meat. So we finally got you on the podcast.
There we go. I'm here.
Thank you for coming over and chatting. And you've got some paperwork here that we have spread out that nobody can see.
Oh, yeah. We got lots to go through.
Yeah, we got lots to go through.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned in my introduction, Anthony is a middle school science teacher. He went to school at MSU. And you studied biology? Is that what,
yeah,
or was it an education?
To be a biology teacher. So
cool.
Yeah.
So he has a lot to say about conservation, and this is a conservation from a younger generation's point of view, I would say. So we are from that 25 to 35-year-olds, and there is, I don't think, a lot out there as far as knowledge. There's a lot of 40-year-olds. A lot of 50-year-olds. We can say Randy.
Yeah. 50?
I don't know. I don't know his age.
Plus
45, Randy? I don't know. Yeah. So anyways, I guess there is an older demographic that talks about this stuff, that's very active in this stuff. A lot of great stuff out there to be heard and to be listened to. But we are going to go through the things that you have brought for us and what you teach your students in a small rural Montana town. So before we head into that and go down that, there are a couple things I want to talk to you about that just kind of correlate with the Meat Bags podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Traditional skills being one of those. You and your wife just finished building your own home.
We did, and I wouldn't say finished is the right word, but
well, yeah.
We're living in it.
Yeah,
so
it's November and you can live in it.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
We're going to make it through the winter. So. Yeah, there's still some little details here and there that we got to work on, but it's a work in progress. So. Yeah, we started, we bought a little piece of property 2020 and got in before the market kind of went nuts on things. So we felt pretty lucky there. And then, when I was growing up in high school and then my college jobs were just construction. And so I learned that skill. And so I'd always kind of had this vision in my head of a house that I wanted to build, and so that's what we went for it. And I know why people don't do it, because it's tough to do it yourself, and we did it with cash, which is part of the reason why it's taken so long. And then I have a more than full-time job for 9.5 months out of the year, and so I had 2.5 months to work hard. And anyways, got her done. So the first summer we got foundation framed up and dried in, and then basically the next summer did all the internal things, the plumbing, electrical, that stuff. And then this last summer I finished, flooring and sheetrock and taping, texture, installation. Marcus came over with a big crew. We insulated the whole thing in like 4 hours. It was awesome.
Sweet. So, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, it's a big project, but it's satisfying. It feels good.
It's a barn-dominium.
Yeah, so
which I find really interesting.
It's a big 2-car garage. It's a 30 by 36 concrete slab, and then set of stairs in the back going up to a apartment upstairs. So it's about 1,000 square feet of living space upstairs. So.
It's great. It's a cool spot.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, we're pretty blessed. So.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how old are you?
Oh, boy. 28. I'm
28 years old. Built your own home. That's pretty cool. There's there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
And being 28-year-old and having your own chunk of land, having your own home that you built. is pretty significant, especially in today's day and age. There's a lot of people that...
I would say it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, hands down.
For sure.
No questions. You got to have some grit.
Well, it's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good for us.
It is.
Doing hard things, for sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that kind of covers some of our traditional skills. You have a myriad of traditional skills, though, that I do enjoy about you, such as taxidermy and boiling deadheads.
There you go. Yeah.
It seems that you've become kind of known in our community a little bit.
I like dead things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it kind of came out of necessity. So going back, my grandpa was a high school biology teacher in Anaconda. And then in the summers, he was a taxidermist. And so he did all this taxidermy stuff. He taught my dad some of that stuff. And anyways, just like growing up the lifestyle that we did, you're killing things and you're like, all right, what, I just let this rot in the garage? Or like, what do I do with it? And so I just started, learning some tips from my dad and then experimenting with new things and trying other stuff and watching some YouTube, trying to get educated. And anyways, I've got my system down pretty good now and can whip through them. So,
well, that's a traditional skill that a lot less people have than even building a home.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot less, I would say. I would imagine. I guess I don't know for sure, but there's not a lot of people out there that especially do their own taxidermy. Yeah. There might be a lot of taxidermists, but most hunters, I mean, I think people dabble in it. You hunt for so many years, you just kind of you have to eventually a little bit, but
I mean, a lot of people though are going to shoot a nice bull elk and bring it to someone to European mount, and they're going to pay $250, $300 to get it European mounted. And so if you can, I mean, probably the equipment that I have invested in it is probably about that much,
Yeah.
And so it's like you do that one time and learn the process, and you're right there. You can just whip them out. So.
That's how I was with doing our own processing, meat processing. We just kind of grew up doing it in general. I guess my dad just kind of always did it. We never had a grinder, though. We never did burger. It was jerky and steaks.
Really?
That was it growing up. I mean, talk about the meat sweats.
Yeah.
Just making hot jerky for days in a row.
The whole house.
Eating bags of it. Oh, just eating so much of it. So we have we've grown in that, doing sausages, doing all sorts of stuff now. But it just led into that as well, kind of that necessity. Yeah. And a desire to have maybe a little OCD thing, but things the way I want them.
Right. Yeah. Do you trust the people that you take it to?
Yeah. There's some.
Yeah.
There's some.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the traditional skill sets, very important to have. And I guess you could even carry this into a traditional skill set. This is storytelling and teaching.
There you go.
I think that is also just as good.
Yeah. I think education is huge. And man, just if we can get the next generation critically thinking and problem solving and
excited.
Excited about things that are important to them. It'd be huge. So.
Yeah. So we have some worksheets here. So Anthony is a teacher, you can tell. He's brought me homework to do and everything, which will be down in the description below. It's going to be files that you're going to be able to download. There is a test. I will try to label it as best as I can as the test. If you are listening to this podcast now, pause right now, go down, download that, and take the test before we continue on. And Anthony's going to go through that. And if you don't, that's fine. Just listen or watch as we go through conservation and the models that have been brought to North America and kind of just the history that has led us to where we're at right now. And I'm just going to let Anthony take this and have him teach me something.
All right. We'll see what we can do.
Alrighty.
So I get to go full teacher mode on you, Marcus.
Yep, for sure. Give it to me.
So I give this little pre-test just to get kids thinking, right? See what their knowledge is, but really just to make them think, what really is happening with these things. So I'm going to break it into the first 4 questions here. I'm going to kind of compile together. So we've got deer, bighorn sheep, we've got elk, and we've got bison. And I give them a little timeline, and on the timeline, I'll kind of show it to you here. So you can give me some accurate answers as best you can. We've got Lewis and Clark, 1804 is when they showed up. West being settled, 1850, World War I, 1914, World War II, 1944 to present day. So it's broken up like every 50 years, the last 200 years basically. So I asked them to draw a graph of the population size. So I want you to think for a little bit here. Deer, elk, bison, bighorn sheep, I think were the ones I had there. Since Lewis and Clark showed up, the last 200 years, how would you describe that population? I mean, use your hands, whatever you got to do. Is the population up, down, steady, increase, steady, decrease, flat line? What do you think's going on?
I would imagine down.
Okay.
I mean, just with the western expansion and railroads and roads and all that stuff, I guess. I would imagine it went down.
Okay. Marcus is educated, guys. It's good.
It's good. I don't know, but
So I'll split this last one up, number 5, kind of to its own thing because it's a little bit different because we were just working with some prey. This is a predator, specifically the wolf, the gray wolf that lived in this area. What do you think its population has done those last 200 years?
For the gray wolf?
Yeah.
Gone down as well.
Okay.
And then there's a little spike.
A little spike.
Here lately.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
There you go.
We actually talked about this in a podcast before with Spencer. What, 80s or 90s were wolves reintroduced?
1995.
1995. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Yeah.
So the wolves.
Okay.
So I think it went down.
You think it went down?
Yep.
Okay,
as
cool.
well.
I'm going to go to these other questions, and then we'll come back, and I'll tell you the answer.
Okay.
Okay. If I can figure out what page I'm on here. Jumping around. So, okay, here's the next question. Who owns the wildlife? So you drive down the highway,
Oh, boy.
antelope on the side of the road. Who owns it? And here's your options. A, Mr. Gossick, that would, right, me, okay. B, the federal government. C, the state of Montana. Or D, I do, which would be you.
Me, the taxpayer.
Okay, you think you own it.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. We're on to number 7.
Oh, man. I'm getting nervous.
Says you're good. This is participation points.
Okay. Good. You're not going to fail me?
No.
You're going to leave my podcast?
No. Okay, number 7. Whose job is it to take care of the wildlife? Your option A, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. B, the government. C, game wardens. D, me. Or E, all of the above.
Ooh. Dang.
Whose job to take care of them?
I'd say, I want to say E, all the above, just to hold everybody accountable. But ultimately, I'm going to say D. It's ours.
You're going to say
It's
you.
our job. It's my job.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. Number 8 says, where does the money come from to build campgrounds, manage wildlife, pay game wardens, research wildlife, etc.? A, taxes. B, the government. C, hunters and anglers. And D, fundraising groups.
Man, all the above?
I didn't give you that.
Yeah, I know. I know hunters and anglers
Okay.
with our conservation license pay a portion of that.
Okay.
I don't know though in total, but
Okay.
I'll go with that. Hunters and anglers.
Okay. Number 9, who enjoys the benefits of wildlife? A, tourists. B, hunters. C, anglers. D, outdoor recreationalists. Or E, everyone.
Everyone.
Okay. Number 10. Oh, you don't really have to do this, but I have them say, write down any of the following that you participate in. We've got hunting, fishing, hiking, skiing, floating rivers, boating, camping, visiting national parks.
Yep.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Okay. So you're like most of my students, like me, you're going to participate in more than one of those things, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we talk about this and why it's important for us. So I'll go back through here. We started with the bison, elk, fumbling pages, sorry.
Bison, elk,
bighorn sheep, and deer. So if you were to draw a population line of these, when Lewis and Clark got here, it was like sky high, right? Like tons of critters. By the time it hit the turn of 1900, right? Those populations had dropped dramatically. Yeah. So within 75, 100 years, those populations were like rock bottom almost. Since then, those populations have been in a steady incline since that point to our current time. The reason I do wolves separate is because a lot of people do have background of wolves in this area, right? And they do the same deal. So they are high when Lewis and Clark are here. They drop, but a little bit later, towards World War I here, people believe that in this specific area, they went to extinction or to near extinction. So that line drops to nothing for a while.
Yeah.
And then it stays 0 until right about this spot, right? And then we have a fraction of the wolves that we had back with Lewis and Clark. So that's kind of what's happened with our populations, which is another reason why we look at this, because it's like, okay, we obviously have a major impact on wildlife. How do we keep them around, right?
Yep.
Next question was, who owns the wildlife? You nailed that one. Each individual owns the wildlife. It's a public resource. That's what it is. So nice work on that one. You feeling good?
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Okay. Whose job is it to take care of the wildlife? You said me, which was good. It is all of the above on that one. So all of those things have a part in it, and you, right, have a specific role in it too. So I'm glad you said that one. Where does the money come from? You also nailed this one. It does not come from taxes, does not come from the government. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but a tiny little fraction comes from fundraising groups. But the largest portion of that, we're talking like 90 plus percentile of that, comes from hunters and anglers buying a fishing license and a conservation license.
Yeah. So you hear that, everybody?
Yep.
So if you are enjoying the boat ramps, you're floating the river, you have access to the river, you're going for hikes, whatever you're doing around Bozeman, Missoula, Kalispell, realize that it's the hunters and anglers that are keeping those open and clean for you.
Yep, it is. So, and things are starting to change a tiny bit on that, but we'll see what happens with it. But number 9 here, kind of the last one we'll talk about, is who enjoys the benefits of wildlife. You said everyone, and you're exactly correct. So some kids would think, oh, just people that hunt, or just anglers or tourists, right? But if we have healthy wildlife populations, that means we have healthy vegetation, we have healthy air, we have healthy water, all the microinvertebrates, all that stuff, that's all healthy, which makes a healthy and biodiverse ecosystem, which in turn leaves us with healthy air to breathe, clean water, all those things. So yeah, every single person benefits from a healthy ecosystem out there. So that's the pretest.
That's good.
You nailed it.
I like that.
Good job.
No, that's really good.
So,
the wolf portion, I just have grown up knowing a lot about wolves, especially from Northeast Montana, because I grew up just outside of Wolf Point, Montana.
Yeah.
And I just remember growing up and seeing all the photos of the massive wolf pelts that were, 70 feet tall. They had these giant stacks that were out on the points of the Missouri River, hence the name Wolf Point.
Yeah.
And these giant, massive stacks that were, 15, 20 people tall.
Yep.
And, just the extinction that brings.
So that would have been 1910, 1920 area in there where people were getting paid to kill them. And it was, we'll talk about this in a second here, but it was man versus, right?
Yeah.
And we wanted to conquer this land. And so it was like, they're in our way. Get rid of them.
Yep.
So, they're the wolves have been an iconic species as far as conservation goes, good and bad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
They're cool animals.
They are.
I will give them that. They are cool animals.
I have a lot of respect for them. I've hunted them a lot of times, and they've gotten the better.
I've tried.
They've gotten the better of me.
I've tried.
Yeah, they're tough species to go after.
Yeah, so. Very cool animals though.
Yeah, so smart, so intelligent. So
cool.
Yeah.
So what's this now? What's this page?
This is
for people who are.
This is like a slideshow that I go through with my kids, and it's a lot. I'm not usually like a lecture type guy in class, but this is like a full period of lecture kind of thing. So we'll try to speed it up here, but it's basically a history of wildlife in North America, but specifically in like the last 200 years is what kind of we focus on, because that's when the West was settled, right? And so anyways, but we just start off talking about like when did wildlife get here, and people believe that they came across on the land bridge, the ice bridge from Russia, with Native Americans, and there's DNA genetics to back that up, that Native Americans are from descendants of the native people from Russia. And anyway, so that's where people believe that they first came across, and at that point, like, wildlife was a necessity. It was a resource. It was survival, right? You don't have wildlife, you can't harvest wildlife.
Yep.
You're not going to survive.
Hence the Sioux and other native tribes moving.
Right. Yeah, they followed the wildlife.
Yep.
That was their resource, and they had to follow them. And so it's a good thing to talk about. Just like we live in a society where I can go down to the grocery store and buy meat or whatever I want, and I don't have to have that connection with the wildlife and the resource. But we all came from people that were directly connected to that.
Yep.
We all are ancestors of hunters and of anglers, in some sense.
You've probably all had a grandparent, no matter who you are listening to this, you probably had a grandparent, or at the very least, you've definitely had a great-grandparent that has killed something and put it on the plate for their family.
Yeah, that's where we come from. That's the reality.
That's it.
So,
Yep.
yeah. So this study of what is our interaction with wildlife, it started then. And as population grew, there had to be some sort of rules. And the first known rules of like wildlife management came in Rome. And their rule was, if you could capture that animal, then you owned that animal. So it was a public resource, but it wasn't held in safety. So the African lion of like the Sahara Desert all but went extinct, because all these macho guys are like, oh, if I get that thing, it can be mine, right?
Mine.
And they go kill it, they go capture it, whatever they would do to get it, but they completely annihilated that resource. And the phrase that they use for that is the tragedy of the commons. So it's a common resource, but it's not. It's able to be taken by anybody. So everybody just goes for it, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And so the same thing happens like with the gold rush. It's a resource. It's a public resource. Anybody can go stake a claim, go get it. We have these huge gold rushes, mine all the gold out of a place, and it's gone.
Yep.
Tragedy of the commons. Common resource disappears, right? So that was the first known use of that. Medieval times is the next point. And this is where a lot of people think Robin Hood came out of. The legend and story of Robin Hood and the reality that was there probably. In that time period, if you were nobility, if you were the king or the queen, the rule is that you owned that wildlife. And so if you're a commoner and you're starving and you're like, man, that deer looks tasty, right?
It's the kings, though.
It's the kings. And so if you took that, the common practice was to have your eyes plucked out.
Dang.
And
That'd make it hard to kill again.
yeah, it'd be tough. It'd be tough. So again, it's this thing that's out there that's free moving, that's free roaming, but it is owned by somebody. And that's where that legend of Robin Hood came from. Of he's out there helping these poor people, and fighting against the king and the queen who owned this stuff. So
that's really interesting, because I know the lumber was held in the same regard as well, because it was obviously so useful for ships and the shipbuilding. So the only wood that was accessible to the common person was wood that had already been fallen from a storm or something like that.
Oh, really?
And that was the only way they could access wood. It was the same concept. You have your hands cut off or whatever it was if you drop a tree.
Wow.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Same type of deal.
Yeah.
So the next historical point is the Magna Carta, which was signed in 1215, and it changed the rules so that it wasn't the king and the queen, but it was the landowner that owned it. So if you're a wealthy man and you could buy, this parcel of land, whatever wildlife came with it, that was yours. And it's kind of sad, but I wish things would evolve a little bit more from this. But that's still how Europe manages their land.
Yeah.
So if you want to hunt, you either have to get permission from the landowner to hunt their wildlife, or you can't. So the common person in Europe that's just living in town, in their little townhouse, they can't go out there and harvest a deer to feed their family. And so it really leads to the rich. The rich are the ones that have it.
Yep.
Yeah, and thankfully in Montana and North America, that's not how it is. So you and me, who are just common citizens, we can go out and enjoy that. So then focusing, that's kind of worldwide stuff. We get to now, the United States is here. We're expanding westward. In that westward expansion, we are running into abundant wildlife. And so that's let me check my dates here again. Lewis and Clark, their expedition, 1804 to 1806. And like a direct quote from them is, they traveled 73 miles along the Yellowstone River, and they were referring to a herd of elk. And they said, we have not been out of sight of them for 73 miles. I mean, that's what we're talking about. From their journal, what they killed for food, 375 elk, 62 pronghorn, 227 bison, and 1,001 whitetail and mule deer.
I wonder how big some of them bulls and bucks were.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Just huge, probably.
I mean, I've heard some of their stories of their grizzly bear encounters, because their first grizzly bear they ran into was at my hometown. Yeah. It was right outside Fort Peck. Yeah. So right where the confluence comes into the Missouri. Yeah. And the Mandan had told them, look out, be careful of these grizzlies. And we got rifles though. You Indians don't know nothing. Sure. And they ran into it. Yeah, crazy. It said just massive. I can imagine. Oh yeah. Yeah, wild.
It would have been a sight to behold.
Yeah, it would have.
Yeah, we're pretty blessed to live where we live, and in winter, this is a wintering ground for huge elk herds, and we can go drive down the valley, and you can see 10,000 elk in a day. Yeah, no problem, But I just can't imagine what Lewis and Clark encountered. Probably man, just incredible. So, yeah. So Lewis and Clark come back with this report of abundance, right? And so this era that we go into as far as wildlife in Western United States is, they call it the era of abundance. And there was just stuff for the taking. So it spurred on the beaver trade. And so we got all these mountain men coming out here, trappers. They're harvesting that. They're going back. They're selling it. It brings a market to the Eastern United States and to Europe of these fur hats that everybody loves. They're paying tons of money for them. And so it just continues, right? And by like the 1950 or 1850s, they estimated 60 million beaver had been trapped. And can you imagine what that did to the landscape in a matter of 30 years?
Oh, that's so drastic.
60 million of them are gone. Wow. So we have abundance, and then the next era is this 1850 to 1900, and they call it the era of overuse. And so we saw this abundance, we went for it, and we just completely annihilated it. So the passenger pigeon is an example. It was a pigeon that was around. It was mostly on the eastern part of the United States, but they believe they killed the last passenger pigeon, and that they haven't been around for 150 years. And it was just because people love to shoot them. Yeah. Take your shotgun and your buddies and let's go shoot some pigeons.
Sure, massive flocks of them.
Yeah, and just dropping them out of the skies.
Yeah. Yeah. Many as you want.
Yeah, but gone. No rules, no regulations, no 3-bag limit,
Would be fun. But.
Yeah. And that's
not gonna lie, but man, that's horrible. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, that's what people thought. So if you want to look at this closer, but there's like some pictures. This is a picture of bison pelts.
Just the pelts.
Stacked high, right? There's another picture here. These are...
Oh, yeah. I think that's in Wolf Point.
Is that Wolf Point?
Yeah, that's in Wolf Point. Those are the buffalo skulls.
Those are stacks of buffalo skulls. And that's a dude standing on top of it.
Yep.
And a dude standing down here. We're talking 30-foot pile, and who knows how long that is. It's insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
So that era was just annihilation of these things. And like some of the big ones to talk about, the passenger pigeon, the beaver, the bison. And the bison was really driven by industrialism. And there was no such thing as rubber at that point. And so these hides were thick, they were durable, they were using them on conveyor belts. I mean, it was the material to have.
Yeah.
Bighorn sheep.
And it took the food source away from the natives, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of also
another
part of it as well.
Yeah, they thought we could get rid of. We're fighting. We're trying to conquer the land. Native Americans are part of the land. If we can get rid of them, we conquer the land even faster.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was part of it. Bighorn sheep were one of the most drastic ones that just got destroyed. I'm sure people were fascinated with how they look, but they also are delicious.
Are they really?
And people
I've never had them. Never had it.
Yeah, super good tasting, and people just kill them. And they come down during the winter, right? Like deer, elk. We talked a little bit about wolves. Wolves even farther on got destroyed. We'll talk about them in a sec, but just destroyed things. Yeah. And it was all
rough
for the purpose of conquering the land, having some fun, kind of making a buck. You know? And we just didn't realize what we were doing. The resource is not unlimited. It's
this interesting. It's kind of, we talked about this in an earlier episode as well, and just talking about, so trying to correlate this with being a Christian, being a believer, right? We are told in Proverbs that a righteous man has regard for his beast, that we are to practice dominion over these animals.
Yep.
And I feel like in a lot of people's minds, a lot of conservative Christians in their mind, that is their idea of conservation. Or maybe that's a little too rough, but that is their idea of dominion, is like, hey, we just kill as much and kill as many as we want. I'm sure people were using that as an excuse to do those things. But understanding now that is obviously not what God intended.
Yeah.
That is I really truly believe that is not what Scripture says. That's not what Scripture means.
Yeah.
That these are renewable resource unless you use all of them.
Right. Yeah.
Then it's not.
The passenger pigeon is not a renewable
That
resource.
is not renewable anymore.
It's gone.
Exactly. So I really, man, it really ties into conservation, agriculture, all of those things, that there is kind of this, there's people on both sides, right? I feel like the very far extreme, typically a conservative kind of individual. It's painting a bad picture for conservatives, which I'm not trying to do.
Sure.
But there's just a lot of them, at least they're painted in this picture of just being destructive. Yeah. Kill it all.
Yeah.
Like, we're supposed to have dominion over this, trample under their foot, Yeah. But that's not a good way to that's not having regard for your beast that we've been put in stewardship over.
Yeah. No, God got to day 6 of creation and he said, I need a helper.
Yeah.
Right? I need somebody to take care of this place.
Yeah, to name all the things.
And he put us here to do that, to take care of it. Mm-hmm. And we've made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is one of them. And it's hard to see for sure because it's not what we're called to do.
No. Yeah. Anyways,
that
was just tying it into another episode, and it's just
for sure.
There's two sides. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Just kind of going through all this stuff and where we've come and what we've learned, and Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
So it hits 1900. People are starting to recognize this ain't good.
Yeah.
And he's called the first conservation president. I wish they would use another word, which I'll talk about in a second. But conservation at the time was not what we define it as now. But Teddy Roosevelt came along, and he loved to hunt. And he saw this happening and recognized it. And he saw land being swept up, railroads, native people gone, native animals gone, herds decimated, and he wanted to preserve it for his children. And so a quote straight from him is leave this land better, or leave this land even better land for our descendants than it is for us. And that was his goal. He wanted this place to be better than it was when he got it.
Dang.
Because he wanted to restore it to its glory, you know. And so some things he did, he designated 5 new national parks, 18 federal monuments, 51 bird reserves, and 150 national forests. Wow. So we live Custer National Forest here, Beaverhead National Forest here, and that's thanks to Teddy Roosevelt.
Yep.
because he was minded in that way.
Yeah, I mean, the Beaverhead alone is 3.2 million acres.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah.
That's massive.
So thanks, Teddy.
That is huge.
Right?
Man,
Thankfully,
thank you.
we have him and then some other people later on that recognize this. And,
Yeah.
But there was still a weird thing going on with predators at this time. Even with Teddy and...
It still is today.
It is, yeah.
Honestly.
And predators have people mixed up. And so, but at this time specifically, we recognized that ungulates, hooved animals, were things that we could harvest and eat. And we liked that. At the same time, we saw wolves especially, but bears, coyotes, mountain lions, all these things that were trying to get that resource as well. And so
Competition, yeah.
right. And so we were like, man, those are the good animals. Those are the bad animals. Let's get rid of those ones so we have more of those ones. And so that's where this predator annihilation came along. And people were pretty good at it. Like they got paid to do it. They believed that by 1920, the last wolves were completely destroyed from the greater Yellowstone ecosystem.
Yeah.
Gone. And I don't know if I entirely agree with that, but that's what people thought. And so we still had these good animals. We got rid of the bad animals, and that was our management plan. And a word that I like to use is adaptive management, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing today. We're adaptive management. We try this, it doesn't work, we try something else, until we find something that works. And that was their first idea, and probably wasn't the best one, right? And so we moved on from that. After that era of preservation, which preservation means non-use of something. So like those Yellowstone Park is a preserve because it's not used, right? There's natural resources there, but they're not used. So that was kind of that era that we were in there. Teddy recognizing all these things and just like shutting it down there, shutting it down there, shutting it down there. And so we have these beautiful national parks now that are preserved thanks to him. But there was still this issue of management outside of those areas. And that leads us to the era of what we like to call scientific conservation. And that goes from 1930 to 1960. And kind of the guy that spurred that on was Leopold. And he was called the father of scientific wildlife management. He was kind of the first person to start this. And where he started was, hopefully I'm saying it right, this is how I've always said it, but the Kaibab Plateau in Arizona, like the area kind of above the Grand Canyon, those big plateaus. There was massive herds of deer, big mule deer in there, huge mule deer. And so like Teddy Roosevelt hunted that. There's record of him doing that. And that was Aldo's first experiment, basically. And there was farmers or ranchers running sheep and cattle on it. And so it was hurting the deer herds. And so they thought, well, we'll fix this. Aldo goes, let's get rid of all the predators. So they kill mountain lions. They kill is it the red wolf or desert Mexican wolf, something down there. Coyotes, bobcats, all those things. They annihilated them. And they pulled the herds off. And they said, we're not going to graze this area with the ranchers. And so what do you think happens to a population of deer that has more food and no predators?
Grows. Right?
It just goes, takes off. That population, I don't know where my numbers are. I don't have them here. But I want to say that it went from about 4,000 because it was down. And I think it peaked at 125,000. A massive growth in about 15 years. Wow. I mean, just skyrocket, right? So that's Aldo's experiment.
No predators, nothing. I mean, no stress on them other than weather, basically.
Yeah. So that's his experiment. And he sees this population rising, and he's probably thinking, oh, I'm doing good stuff here. Right?
Yeah.
But it's all adaptive management. And so what do you think happens to a population of deer that are just skyrocketing? I mean, whatever times that would be.
Yeah, overgrazing.
They overgraze themselves. Disease sets in.
Disease,
and so that population goes from 125,000 to near extinction within a couple years.
Just from themselves.
And so
Is there any clear sign that it is just a designed purpose and that we are supposed to be stewards of this land?
Yeah,
It's very evident. It's
absolutely.
like we need to have a part. You
Yeah.
can't just sit back and let's just let it be.
No.
Those days are gone, long gone.
No. Yeah.
200 years ago, that was possible.
Yeah. Just the fact that Western civilization is what it is means that we have to have a role in it.
Yep.
We cannot just let it go.
Yep.
Because it cannot sustain itself
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So as Aldo sees this population start to get sick, he opens hunting seasons. And he says, all right, we're going to open hunting seasons. People are going to come in, try to hunt these things, but it's not quick enough. And that population just plummets, right? And so he learned a bunch from that. And thankfully, that population stabilized. And I think now it's about 9,000, 10,000, somewhere in there. And that's a healthy population for it, which before it was too low and not healthy and too high and not healthy. But now we've got it to a place where it is healthy. That was his first experiment, and he just started experimenting with these things. And he was teaching these philosophies to other people and trying to figure out how to do this scientific conservation. And he's got some other cool stories. He's an author.
Leopold?
Leopold's an author
Really?
and an artist. Here's like a.
I would love to read some of his books.
He's got a book. I have a couple copies in my classroom. I'm spacing the name on it now. Sorry. He's an artist too.
I know what optics I'm going to be buying that from now on.
There you go. So actually, the optics are spelled different, which is sort of weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know the whole background story on that, but I should look into it. So that's a picture that he drew.
Wow.
An artist. And then this is from his book. It says, "We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a commodity in which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect."
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what he had seen happen, people abusing the land because they thought this is a resource that we just need to use.
Yep.
Instead of seeing humans as a part of this ecosystem and how can we work together. So that was really his big push. And the key to the whole thing that he came up with is that it has to be driven scientifically. And so that's why I talk about it in my middle school science classes is, okay, we talked about all this history. We're to the point now where we understand what's going on, but we have to do this scientifically.
Yep.
And so that's why we have biologists. They're collecting population data. They're gathering all this information. And so when you go to put in for a elk tag, and say you put in the elk horns, and they give, I think it's 100 elk tags over there for bulls. I probably shouldn't quote me on those things, but the reason they're giving that number is because science says that we can harvest this many and still have a healthy population. And so that's using science to practice conservation. Preservation is the non-use. Now we're in conservation. Conservation is wise use.
So I have a question with that. So
Yeah.
in Yellowstone, which is preservation,
Yeah.
nobody shoots any animals in there ever?
So here's a good story.
Yeah.
My grandpa
Yes.
was a biologist.
Yes.
In the summers, as he taught biology, and he worked for the park. And part of his job, because he worked, I don't know the dates, but 60s, 70s, worked for them. Part of his job was to go cull elk.
Can you imagine?
It's crazy.
It is
there's
wild.
pictures of him.
And that's why he archery hunted, right?
Yeah. So
He's like, I'm not going to shoot an elk
there's
with my
pictures
rifle.
of him with a dozen 300 plus 6-point bull elk lined up that he just went out and shot.
An albino one.
Well, he got that one later. He was actually hunting at that point.
That is crazy.
But yeah, my dad grew up never rifle hunting with my grandpa because my grandpa did not enjoy
I do this
it.
for work.
It was part of his job. So he's like, I'm not going out there with a rifle. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
So he
wild?
longbow hunted. And then when my dad was old enough to hunt, but really wasn't able to use a bow efficiently at that point because you're 12 years old and trying to pull back a bow, that's when my grandpa started rifle hunting again to take my dad out. And then, I think my dad was about 15 and he had the rifle in his hand and there had been word about this albino bull elk running around. And happened to be running across the hillside, and my grandpa ripped the gun out of Dad's hands. And
Like, sorry, bud. Not today.
There you go.
Not
Yeah.
at 15.
no. So, anyways,
That's hilarious. What
Yeah.
father wouldn't, I suppose?
yeah,
It'd be hard not to.
I know.
That'd
Yeah,
be real hard not to.
it's got to go down. And a lot of
Yeah.
people were super excited that my grandpa killed it because, being a part-time taxidermist, he knew how to take care of it.
Yeah.
And so he took care of the whole hide. Got the whole thing taxidermist, and he put this huge 7-point rack on it, And anyways, he was a really successful longbow hunter too. Killed a lot of big elk, but yeah. So back
And
to
you still have no idea where that albino
No.
elk is? Anybody out there?
please help.
Anybody out there? Let us know.
So it was in somebody's personal, and I don't even know how it ended up there, but it was in somebody's personal, collection.
Like a collection, yeah.
That was over in Livingston at some point. And I don't know if the guy died or what went down, but he ended up selling his entire collection and never notified us or probably anybody that had stuff, private things that they sold him. And anyway, so yeah, I don't know when that was, but that thing is gone. It was so it was mounted, big bull elk, full body mount, 6-point. He's got his head, tipped up like he's bugling, antlers are back, and then there's 2 or 3 full body mount cow elk around him.
Wow, this
and
is huge.
went all out.
He did too, yeah.
Aspen,
Being a taxidermist.
aspen
Trees,
trees.
I bet he had so much fun with it.
Oh yeah, so cool.
I bet he had a blast.
So
doing that.
if
That's so
someone
cool.
knows where this thing is at,
Anybody,
please tell me, because I've never laid eyes on it. We just have pictures of it.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah, I would love to see it. And
I have to build a new barn dominium for you, though.
oh yeah, I gotta go. I gotta save up some money, I guess.
A $500,000 mount that you
Yeah.
need to have again.
Take a loan out on it, put the house on it, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, if anybody even knows about that, send us a picture or something
Yeah,
at least.
please.
Yeah.
Please.
I'll have 30 people only watch this anyways. So who
Yeah.
knows?
I need to get on Randy's podcast and talk about that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Randy, any of you guys listening, Randy, whoever, Meat Eater, all you guys out there, hey, we're looking for this mount.
Help us.
Help us.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Cool.
Cool story.
So
It
back
is.
to my grandpa killing stuff.
Yes.
We got rid of all those predators, right?
Yeah.
And so we knew we had to control these populations because otherwise they would increase, eat themselves out of house and home. Disease would set in and we would lose our populations. So part of his job was to go in and cull these elk. And they would bring them to the food bank, and stuff like that. The resource wouldn't disappear. But there was no predators present, and so we had to be the predators.
Yeah.
And that's, again, part of scientific management. They're using science to manage that. So it jumps us to, I'm going the wrong direction here, between 1960 and the present day, we call it the era of experimentation. And we're just talking about adaptive management, where we're trying new things, we're trying to figure out what's best for the wildlife. But it's all a huge experiment, basically.
Yeah.
And this is really the start of biologists studying things, ecology as a study that you could go into in college, those types of things, and a career in that path to try to manage those things. So that's sort of where we're at. This is a cool page that I have. These are some wildlife groups that kind of started out of this area, so I don't know if you can see that. But we've got Ducks Unlimited, Mule Deer Foundation, Wild Sheep Foundation, National Wild Turkey Foundation, RMEF, Trout Unlimited, and the list just goes on and on of all these groups that started to try to raise awareness, figure out how can we rebound these populations. And it's really been a massive success story, which is why you and me can go out our backyards here and we can go harvest these animals because we manage them correctly in order to do that. So, yeah. And then that leads us to, this other page. We set up what's called the North American model of wildlife conservation. And it's got 7 tenets, and there's a lot of details in those 7 tenets. I like to break it up into 3 things. So basically I break it up into, I think of a 3-legged stool, and a 3-legged stool can't stand without one leg, right? And so these are the three legs that holds this North American model up. The first one is the wildlife belongs to you. So you, me, everyone, Liam Boone, right? That's his wildlife. And so it puts some responsibility on you.
Some ownership,
Yeah, and I want to teach that to my students of when you drive down the road and you see that herd of antelope on the side of the road, that's yours. That's your public resource. And so it throws that responsibility in there, that ownership.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
That's one leg. The second leg is that it's ruled by scientific data. And this is a huge thing to go down. But we have these paid professionals that go out there, do their research, and then they suggest how things are managed. And they say, we need to do this and this. And then where it gets fishy is that somehow has to be put into law. And so then you get government involved in this. And that's where,
never good.
That's where things go downhill, right?
Yeah,
so like
sure.
An example that's kind of interesting to talk about is, I want to say it's in 2018, British Columbia had a vote, and I call it ballot box biology, BBB, ballot box biology. Instead of trusting our true biologists, they put it to the ballot box, and they asked the general
90% of them who don't even hunt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're talking
more.
Vancouver, right? These huge cities. Is Vancouver in British Columbia? I think so.
Yeah, whatever. It's up there.
Yeah, somewhere up there. But huge cities of populations that look at a grizzly bear and they say, oh, that's a cute little grizzly bear. Like, that's so nice, right? We want more of those. Don't kill them. And so they put it to that. They put the grizzly bear hunting season to the ballot box. And it comes back, the ballot box says, no, we don't want to hunt.
Man, this happened in Washington right now, too.
Yeah, it's going on all across our country. This is just like one of the major first ones that went down.
Man, this is also sorry, this is a side note.
Yeah.
This is also a byproduct of gatekeeping hunting. For any of you who are fed up by all the out-of-staters coming up here who love to hunt and are getting excited about hunting, or the people who are just starting to hunt, this is a big one for me, because I've just ran into a lot of people that didn't want to teach me how to hunt growing up. Didn't want to take me to their places, which that's understandable. I understand that.
Yeah.
But didn't want to teach me anything about it. Didn't want me to enjoy it. Didn't want me to love it, which is the biggest failure. Yeah. And with the social media here too, I'm not here to give away free hunting spots. That's not my idea of this social media platform. My idea of this, or what I would like to do with this, is to bring awareness to hunting, but to get people excited about it and to show that all of you can do it. You can go out and you can enjoy it, even if you don't kill anything, because if you're going to love something, then you're going to want to protect it. And the more people we can get to love this, or understand that 95% of why you even have public lands is because of hunters and anglers funds that give into it, that you'll join in and you'll start doing those things. So anyways, big side note.
Yeah, it's huge.
But yeah, that's is we need more people who want to hunt. And if one of your buddies, one of your family members has been talking about it for years, then make it happen now. Get them out, and make them enjoy it, and teach your children how to do it as well. And this is what's happened in Washington. Is maybe it's not just the gatekeeping from the hunters. I don't think it's that, but it's just the fact that the majority of the population has no idea what hunting is, or they just don't care. They don't care at all. And so their votes are kind of like, meh, whatever.
Well, they don't care, but then they see a cute little bear out there, and they're like, oh, I care about that. Let's keep that around. Right?
Yeah, kill the hunters, keep the bears.
Yeah. So in British Columbia, they were killing 500 bears a year, 500 grizzly bears a year in British Columbia.
Dang.
They cold turkey cut it off. And so you want to talk about...
Dang, didn't learn anything from Leopold?
Right.
Come on, Canada.
That's the whole...
Jeez.
That's the whole...
The king's conservation, huh?
What
a joke.
The model sits on science.
Yeah.
And when you don't let science rule it, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know? And so... it's been 6 years since then, and so you're talking 600 more bears in 2019, 600 plus, or 500 more bears in 2019, 500 plus more, plus the 500, right? And it's just like, and I don't know what will happen, but as you probably British Columbia people would know this, but bear encounters are just going to
Go way up.
right. And they're just going to incline until
people have to start
something's got to
slaughtering
happen.
them. Yep.
Right. But
There'll be the pendulum swing.
yeah. I don't know what'll happen, but so we got number 1 belongs to you. Number 2, ruled by scientific data. And then number 3, this is the one that people don't understand very well, is that it's funded by hunters and anglers. Mm-hmm. And so I have some data on it that's pretty cool to look at. I'll show you this here, and then people
hold it up for them. So this is the page if you're watching.
Hold
anyways.
this up, and if you want to pause on it or whatever you got, but it looks like that. So this is just a breakdown of the Montana FWP budget. So their budget, I think I pulled these numbers in 2020, I think. So yeah, their budget was $70 to $80 million. So it's going to average around in that area. 70% of that comes from hunting and fishing licenses.
Wow.
So
I'd said 90 earlier. I was making that up.
So you put in for your tags, you spend some money. You buy a fishing license, a conservation license. You buy your elk tag. You're spending money, right? That money makes up 70% of the budget. And then if you break that down further, you and me as in-state people from Montana, I can go down and buy my elk hunting tag. Is it $20, $19, $20? Yeah. Okay. Do you know what an out-of-stater spends?
400 something.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's hundreds, like $500 or $500 on something like that.
I've helped a couple out-of-state friends try to get their tags and stuff. And
So if you break this down, our in-state license end up being 30% of
the 70.
Of the 70.
Wow.
If you break down the out-of-state license, it's 70% of that 70. So you do a little math, 0.7 times 0.7 is 0.49. 49% of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks budget comes from out-of-state hunters.
So all you ragging on the out-of-staters.
That's right. So
I do it too, but
it hurts me
we need you guys
so bad when I go to my favorite spot to fish and I pull up and it's like a Washington license plate. I'm like,
or California.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's something in me that says I need to be thankful for these people being here. It supports our little town
community for sure.
Our community,
big time.
It supports the management for our species.
Yep.
And it's huge. So that's 70% of it, hunting and license, and fish.
And those are the out-of-staters you want here anyways.
Right. We don't,
You know, the ones that are out hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
Those are most likely the ones that we want around anyways.
For sure. 20% of it comes from Pittman Robertson, which with your ammu manufacturing, I'm sure you're educated on that. But that's every time. So this is crazy. This is mind blowing. We got to, let me see if there's a date in here that I have. I don't have a date, but people like Aldo Leopold, Teddy Roosevelt, they recognized a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And the common people recognized a problem too of this resource that we love, our fish, our elk, our deer, these populations are declining massively. Yeah. And they said, what do we do about it? And I don't know if there's another case in history of people saying this, but they said, let's tax ourselves. And so there's is it 11%? See, I don't even have all my numbers. I'm not even talking about anything important here. I think it's an 11% excise tax. So if I go down to
ammo and
I buy a box of ammo,
yeah, that's right.
11% of that is already built into that, and it goes straight to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
That's a cool.
Fletchings for my bow. Panther Martin, which we love.
Love them.
Anything.
Sponsor the show.
That's right. Please, Panther Martin, come on. Any of that stuff that you buy.
Cool. Yep.
11% is built in because of this Pittman Robertson. Those were the two congressmen that helped push it through. And we as hunters said, we love this so much, we're willing to tax ourselves to keep it around. And I don't know if there's another case in history where people done that to themselves.
I'm still willing.
And when this came about, 1920s, the Great Depression.
Oh, man. Wow.
And people were
talk
still
about
saying,
sacrifice.
Tax ourselves.
I mean, you think about it, though. I mean, talk about realizing your dependency on food sources available around you.
Absolutely.
And then being like, oh, shoot, we need to conserve this in case another depression happens or whatever. Yeah. I mean, talk about it. Yeah,
They knew.
An
They saw
invaluable
going.
resource.
They saw it going, and they knew. So
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
yeah. So the last 10% there, so 70 to hunting and fishing licenses, 20 to pitmen, 10 just comes from fundraiser groups. So Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Wild Turkey Foundation, Wild Sheep Foundation, 10% of it comes from those people. So the thing about this that people don't get is that tourists, out-of-staters, somebody just going for a picnic, they go use that boat ramp, or they go use that scenic pullout, or they go use that outhouse alongside the road at a fishing access where they have their picnic. The money for that came straight from this. And if you haven't bought a hunting license, a fishing license, or bought a gun or ammo or something for your bow or your fishing
Conservation
pole,
license, yeah.
right? If you haven't purchased that, you have zero money put into
That is very interesting.
this. And so people
Wow.
people that don't participate in this, you've got a lot to be thankful for. And what Marcus was talking about earlier, if you want to keep this around, you keep hunters and fishers and anglers around.
Yep.
Because without them, the funding for this, it's gone.
Yep.
You're going to be left with 10%,
Nothing.
which
You won't be doing nothing. You
which
won't even be
is-
paying people to have a job.
Yep.
10%.
Yeah. So that's huge. That's the North American model. It sits on the funding from the hunters and anglers, people owning the wildlife, and then ruling it by science. And
Man,
if we can keep those three things around, we're going to be all right.
there are just so many people that do not fall into that 90% though.
Yeah. And it's under attack.
So many people, and it's under attack on top of it.
Yep.
And I don't know how not to tie this into anything political or anything like that. I'm not trying to, but
Yep.
you know, you have these big university towns that are making major decisions for entire states.
Yep.
You know, Washington's a good example. Oregon's a good example. Montana's a good example.
Colorado's trying to make a
Colorado's
decision
a great
right now.
example.
They're trying to bring back wolves, which
Yeah, that's going to be horrible.
huge jar of worms to
Oh man, yeah.
dig into, but
So yeah, I mean, it's the majority of people just, for one, really don't have any input or any say whatsoever into the conservation or the public land that you so freely use.
yeah.
Unless you have done one of those things, you have gone hunting, you have bought a conservation license, you have, etc. Yeah, so people get into it.
Yeah.
Spend your money wisely. Know where you're spending money. Even if you don't go hunting, buy a conservation license. Buy a conservation license. You can use all the boat ramps. You can use camping sites.
Or
There's a lot.
or donate to these fundraising groups. They're
Yeah.
putting their money towards I love what these fundraising groups are doing, because we can have this land or we can have this wildlife, but it's not going to be accessible to us unless we have our public lands too, which is a huge I mean, they go hand in hand, right?
Yep.
For us to use this resource. And a lot of these fundraising groups are putting their money towards buying up access.
Lands and stuff. Yeah.
And that's huge. So
Yeah, I know RMEF has done a lot of that.
Yeah.
And you can, anybody who has the Onyx app, you can see what Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has bought and what they've utilized and done. They've done a lot around Missoula and even West Virginia. They've done a huge chunk of land there and brought in a giant population of elk over there from Montana and took them over there. That's really cool. I didn't know that. West Virginia has like one of the best elk hunting places in North America.
Pennsylvania too, I think, has got some stuff.
That's crazy to me.
yeah,
But those deep hollers and stuff, I mean, I don't like
Yeah.
it over there, but
Yeah.
yeah, wild to me. It's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is conservation in a nutshell.
It's important.
It is
And
important.
that's why I try to educate my kids on this stuff here, because they're the next generation coming up to do this. But everybody can have a piece in it too.
So with the Meatbags podcast, we talk about traditional skills. Conservation is a traditional skill. It is a skill that has been grown and shaped and molded through a lot of death and a lot of failure. And we are here where we're at now, standing on the backs of great men that have done great things for conservation, for the wildlife around us. So pass that on to your children And if you're listening and this is the first time you've heard any of this or even talked about any of this, download these and tell somebody else about it and go out and start getting into hunting. Find somebody. Somebody will help you.
Education is power. Take it and use it.
Very much. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for coming on.
I get excited about this stuff, so it's fun to talk about.
Me too. We'll have you on again. Don't worry.
Yeah. All right.
All righty.